Welcome to Trial Talk, insights from experienced New York trial attorney Michael Joseph.
Welcome to Trial Talk, insights from legal expert Michael Joseph. I'm Sam Henniger, and I'm excited to talk with Michael today. Michael, I'd really love to get to know you and why you do what you do, from the context of hearing more about how you grew up, your upbringing.
Well, I grew up in the Bronx in New York City, and even from a young age, I saw a lot of social inequality and injustice, and I figured the law was one way where I could maybe make a difference and be able to do something. So that's why I chose law, and I became a trial lawyer. And I spent most of my career representing people who have either been disenfranchised or have had something terrible happen to them. And I really feel it gives me an ability to, in some way, right the scales of justice and really bring justice to people who don't always have the ability to get justice.
Let's dive into that a bit more. You mentioned growing up in the Bronx and seeing, of course, injustices growing up. Tell me more about the path that led you towards practicing law.
I would say the path started that when, for example, like many kids growing up in the Bronx, we were harassed by the police from time to time for no reason. There were also a lot of my friends who had been hit by cars or fell on the subway and got hurt. Or I've also had a lot of friends in construction who got hurt on dangerous job sites. Becoming a lawyer was a way to help these people out and to give back. Even though it was not the best area in the world, we always had a strong sense of community where we tried to help each other. And that was my way of trying to give back to the community. Now for 20 plus years, I've been representing New Yorkers who have been victims of either social justice, police misconduct, they've been falsely arrested, or people who are hurt on construction sites, or people who are hit by cars just walking the street because of careless drivers. So I really feel a sense of pride in being able to right the scales of justice and bring justice to people who otherwise, wouldn't have a voice or otherwise disenfranchised.
Now, when you were studying law at Tulane, what were some of the more formative experiences you had there?
One of the most rewarding experiences I had in law school was becoming part of the criminal clinic, where instead of taking a class, we were assigned to represent indigent people who are facing criminal charges. And that was probably one of the most formative experiences I had in law school career, because I was doing real work on real cases for real people. Also, having had a little bit of a background as a private investigator, I was able to investigate charges, investigate things that people were being accused of a little more thoroughly. And a lot of the work I did really resulted in either cases getting dismissed. We were able to show that people really didn't do what they were being accused of, or there were some mitigating factors. And we were really able to kind of make the system work for a large group of people that were really disenfranchised. In New Orleans, Louisiana, the criminal justice system is abhorrent. The public defenders in general are overworked, so they really can't pay a lot of attention to cases. So in those days, I learned what effect doing an adequate investigation and really looking under every stone can make in terms of making a case, of building a case and presenting it, being able to present an effective case to challenge the accusations that are being brought against somebody.
And I'm really excited to get to know the ins and outs of building a case with you in later conversations. But for the sake of getting to know you, would you mind explaining some of those first few years after law school and starting to build your practice and build your reputation?
Well, the first handful of years, I was really learning my craft. I started off doing basically public defense, so I was constantly in court, handling 50, 100 cases on the calendar a day. But I also got the opportunity to try cases. When you try a case, you also have to prepare the case. So it gave me a lot of lessons on how to prepare a case, how to get evidence, how to build up a case, and how to be able to prove a case ultimately. After that, I went to a small firm in Manhattan that was focused on construction accidents and maritime accidents, and I was doing a lot of heavy litigation. And in those years, I really perfected my craft. I learned how to write motions into discovery and how to get the information and evidence I needed to be able to put my clients in the strongest possible position. And those basic skills that I learned starting out are still with me today. I still go the extra mile. I still look under every stone, and I still go the extra effort. Nobody outworks me in terms of preparing a case for trial and being in the strong position when you know you have a case prepared for trial. It leads to good settlements. And that's why we get very favorable settlements here, because Every file gets worked up. Every client has an attorney they speak to, and I know all of my clients. And we really go the extra mile to make sure that we've done our homework and done everything we can and gotten all the evidence we can to prove the case. So that means I'm invested in the case. I'm invested in going the extra mile to make sure we can win the case, because if I don't win and I don't do a good job, I don't get paid. So to a degree, me and my clients have a common interest in getting the case concluded favorably. And we offer free consultations because, of course, you want to know if I'm the right fit for you. You want to know if this relationship is going to be good for you. So we always offer free consultations. That way, we know if this is the case I'm comfortable handling, and if I'm the guy you want. I'm not going to expect anybody to pay me just to find out if I can do something for them.
Trust and rapport are so important to establish early on to see if there's a fit in the relationship. Why don't you tell us more about your view on building a relationship of rapport and trust with each of your clients?
Any relationship with a client is obviously highly important. This business, where people are entrusting me with serious or important things in their lives, is a relationship business. So people have to feel comfortable knowing that I'm going to do what I need to do I'm going to do my job. They have to feel comfortable knowing that I'm going to do my job and that they can trust me. Because whenever someone is retaining a personal injury lawyer, especially, something's bad's happened to them. Or even in a commercial case, they've been cheated, they've been swindled. So they're trusting me with something very important in their life. So of course they need to know who they're dealing with and have a meeting and make sure that they feel comfortable working with me.
And for those cases you've worked on and gotten many favorable outcomes for your clients, what's a particularly challenging case you'd say that you've had and you're really proud to have worked on?
Some of the cases where I've been very happy or very proud of are a couple different areas. One of them was some of the construction accidents where I've worked on, where people have had good careers, and because a company cuts corners on safety, they get hurt. And all of a sudden, they're going from making union scale and a six-figure salary to being paid $400 a week on comp. And I've heard stories where fathers have had to tell their children that we can't do this, or we can't go on this trip, or we can't. There's things, activities at school that they can't provide for because now they're just getting on comp. And this happened because a construction contractor cut corners and didn't provide proper safety equipment. So in those cases, where I have several cases. Where I've tried a case. I remember one particular one where a landscaper working on a construction site, and he was hit with a piece of excavation machinery and literally thrown 20 feet in the air into a tree. I mean, this was a life-altering injury. And we went to a trial in Westchester County, which is generally an unfavorable location to try a case, especially for construction workers. And we got a full 100% liability verdict with a seven-figure recovery. So the difference that made in his life, words can't express what we did for him. Another significant case I had was a very landmark case where we sued the city for malicious prosecution. We had a security worker and part-time police officer who was wrongfully charged with murder. This ended his career. We went to trial in the Southern District of New York, and we got a full liability verdict against the detectives who wrongfully prosecuted him, who used dirty confidential informants that they knew were lying, and went forward with the case anyway. This man sat being prosecuted for murder for 3 years, and his career was over. He fell into major depression to the point that he couldn't leave the house. So I felt really, really good to be able to have him sit there and have a jury vindicate him and tell him not only he had been cleared by one jury already and found not guilty, but when we tried the civil case, the jury told him, yes, he was maliciously prosecuted. There was no probable cause for him to have been prosecuted. And I think that having that recognition went a long way towards, one, clearing his name, because even though he was found not guilty, people still looked at him like he did it. But having gone to trial in a federal court and having a federal court and a jury in a federal court say, no, these officers maliciously prosecuted you, and we're awarding you, I think the verdict was something about $1.7 million. I think that went a long way to making them take responsibility for the damages they did to his life.
That's incredible. You're explaining at least two of those cases. I'm sure many of us lay people who are unfamiliar with how law really operates. You had mentioned how in one that they had brought it up in a district that was, you said, unfavorable for that type of case. I'd like to know, and I think our listeners would like to know, just a little bit more of the lawyer's perspective on what does that mean to bring up a case in an unfavorable district, or how does that all work? What does that mean?
Well, the jury pool is really a reflection of the community. So where you bring a case obviously depends on where the accident happened or where the parties live. But sometimes, unfortunately, you have to be in an unfavorable jurisdiction. And what's that mean? That means particularly with affluent or upper class jurors, they don't necessarily relate to laborers or people who go to work on construction sites or the average person. And they look down on people who sue. There's no two ways about it. They look down on plaintiffs in lawsuits. So we've developed a lot of skills and techniques that in jury selection, we really try to weed out those kind of jurors that are going to view negatively our clients because they're socially, economically better off, or they just look down on people who work for a living as opposed to putting on a suit and tie every day. So in those cases, we've been successful because we're able to get to expose a lot of those biased opinions, and we're able to get those people off the jury. The problem is in places like Westchester or maybe Long Island, there's just a higher percentage of them than in places, like the Bronx or Brooklyn or Manhattan, where people tend to be more liberal.
I hadn't considered that, of course, the pool of people who might sit on a jury would obviously be affected by the way they live and in relation to who's coming up and whose case it is. So I see that definitely as related to your work in social justice, economic justice. I wonder if you'd speak more to that and why it's important to have that perspective to do the work you do.
In terms of the potential jury pool, you got to remember, people always view whatever case they're listening to or judging through their own personal lens. And their own personal lens is a reflection of who they are, how they lived, and the experiences that have happened to them. I think they did a study where we studied different jury pools, considering different issues, and I think the most common words they use is, this is just like. So people have a tendency, whether it's conscious or unconscious, to compare what they're seeing or what they're considering with their own lives. And if people come from a certain background where they think people suing is something they shouldn't do, or they look down on people, they're going to look down on the plaintiff. If certain people come from an insurance background, they're going to look down on the plaintiff. If people come from a background where their family members are doctors that have been sued, or they tend to identify with defendants more than they do people who get hurt, they're going to be defense-oriented jurors. So I think it's very important in terms of the technical skills, being able to weed those people out in jury selection and identify them.
Thinking about how I personally, as a millennial and having many friends who are Gen Z, a lot of these people in younger generations are socially conscious. And I'm sure there are lots of people who are getting into law wanting to solve these issues of justice and equality. What would you give in terms of advice for aspiring lawyers or newly practicing young lawyers that want to make an impact in this way?
My advice would be to follow your dreams and to recognize that it's a hard road ahead of you, that it's a lot of work. And if you don't want to do it and you don't have a desire to do it, you're not going to make it. So don't even try. But if it's something you have a desire to do and it's something you have the fire inside you for, then go for it. Apply to the positions where you think you can make a difference and see where you land. There's enough injustice in the world that there's plenty of opportunity to do the right thing or to handle cases that can make a difference.
So, Michael, as we wrap things up, given your experience and your perspective, I'm curious what kind of encouragement or something you feel is very hopeful looking forward that you see developing. One
thing I'm hopeful that I see developing, which I think is very positive, is coming out of COVID, where the courts were basically shut down and forced to adopt different models. We've had tremendous increase in efficiency. There's still a tremendous backlog on a lot of the cases. We're still not getting cases out to trial like we used to, but we're improving. And I think one of the big things this is somewhat technical, but one of the big things that's come about is courts have developed electronic or e-filing. Courts have developed virtual conferences and started using virtual conferences on a regular basis rather than having 200 people go and sit in the Bronx courthouse waiting for their case to be called. Now there's a time slot, you're in, you're out. And that efficiency really allows attorneys like me to do a lot more work and be able to handle a lot more cases for people, because rather than sitting around in court and waiting for a case to be called or having to send someone down to the courthouse to physically submit papers, we can do it from our desk with a button. So I'm very encouraged actually by a lot of the efficiencies that the courts have developed, mostly as a result of COVID. And we're still working through the COVID backlogs, but I'm hoping that with these efficiencies, the COVID backlogs are really going to start to clear up, and then we can start getting more and more cases to trial. And it's terrible telling people that there's a 1.5 year wait to get a trial date from the point in time that everyone agrees that they're ready for trial. And I think that really gives the insurance companies an advantage in trying to wait people out and make lowball offers. So hopefully with some of these improvements in efficiencies, we'll get back to the point where once cases are ready for trial, they'll be tried within a few months.
This has been Trial Talk, insights from legal expert Michael Joseph. I'm Sam Henniger. Michael, thank you so much for spending time with us. Remember to like, share, subscribe, because we will continue to have great conversations just like this.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.